Hello and welcome to this episode of Convenience Talks. Thank you for joining me. I'm Katy Moses. I'm founder and MD of KAM Media, and I'm joined today by David Rees, industry journalist and former editor of C-Store. Hello, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, all the better for seeing your smiling face, of course. David, I want to talk today a little bit, I want to sort of use your experience and your knowledge of the industry to look a little bit at what's happened over this last 12 months and then to look forward into the future and where the convenience industry sits. What do you think? I mean, we're all very aware of the obvious challenges, the challenges of actually getting product onto the shelf and the safety challenges, etc. What else has convenience had to deal with over the last 12 months?
I think the first thing to understand is that the convenience stores come in different types, depending on location, depending on operating model, all of those sort of things. I guess you could probably say there are three broad types. There are the urban city centre type transport hub sort of types that have lots and lots of customers and serve them very quickly. There are the sort of neighbourhood community-based convenience stores, which is sort of the local shop for people, and then there are stores that trade seasonally, particularly strong at certain times of year, and then much less strong at other times of year. And so those three broad types, we all have had very different experiences during the lockdown. The sort of the community-based, neighbourhood-based stores obviously have been an absolute lifeline for people that live near them. For people, for whatever reason, don't feel safe in a supermarket or just don't feel inclined to go to a supermarket. But those stores themselves, although they've had probably increased sales, they've had increased challenges just in terms of the safety aspects, the hand sanitizers, the screens, the sort of one-way schemes, the general sort of cleaning regimes and things like that, all of which would be challenging in a small store, particularly when it's sort of independently run and would not necessarily have huge amounts of capital to get hold of. The other types of stores would have had challenges in a business sense. If you're a convenience store that relies on tourist trade, for example, like many do, then they would have been suffering a little bit, along with sort of hospitality in those areas. I think probably in the general sense, the challenges that stores have been facing are kind of operating in a different way. As you rightly said, in the initial months, certainly was getting hold of stock, but actually it's possibly dealing with customers in a different way, customers having different needs or sort of having their needs satisfied at the convenience store rather than sort of via other outlets or something like that. And it's just keeping pace with that and being able to adapt under the restrictions of a lockdown. There's kind of been an ongoing challenge for the industry, I think.
Yeah, and of course, as you just rightly said, more people were using their local store in lockdowns, and we were attracting customers that perhaps we hadn't seen before, or certainly that weren't really relying on convenience before. So that was obviously an opportunity for us. It also meant that the average age of the customer was coming down, because it wasn't just the sort of older people it wasn't just a majority of older people using the stores. What were the opportunities that this has thrown up over the last 12 months for convenience?
Well, the opportunity is probably to adapt the range better for those needs. I think probably everybody is aware by now that with pubs generally being closed, then a lot of the alcohol business has gone into take-home sector. So huge opportunities there for convenience stores to increase their licensed alcohol sales, and probably with that comes the opportunity to sort of increase the range and to have to try new things. So some of the sort of newer, faster growing areas, craft ale, quality wine, spirits and sort of cocktail type preparations and things like that. So it's probably provided opportunities for convenience stores to try some new lines in those areas, and have great success that way. Also, some more surprising products, things like plants and flowers. Actually, with people spending more time at home and probably not having so much to be cheerful about, then a huge number of people are either sort of taken up gardening, spent more time gardening, or just sort of within the house put more plants and flowers in the house, and there's a bigger market for those, and convenience stores have been stocking a bigger range and a greater variety, and been doing very well in those sort of things. So it's really all been about adapting to the changing circumstances and just sort of tweaking product ranges and things in stores just to sort of make sure you're satisfying your customers.
And you mentioned hospitality and pubs and bars and restaurants being closed. Obviously, we're looking at a phased reopening from the 12th of April. What do you think the effect will be on convenience once hospitality does reopen its doors, be that outside or inside?
I think not necessarily negative. I mean, I think that just the general easing of restrictions and opening just gets people out and about more. I think convenience stores will benefit from that just as much as hospitality will. I think C-stores have been sort of moving into food to go and that for quite a while now, but it does come in different forms. There's the sort of food to go, which is really just a sort of a premium product ready to eat or drink, milkshakes, frozen carbonated beverages, those sort of things, and those will benefit from greater footfall, particularly sort of younger people sort of on the move more.
Yeah.
There's the food to go, which has kind of traditionally been the mainstay of C-stores, which is hot drinks, bacon rolls, sausage rolls, and things like that, primarily sold to workmen and people who are working outdoors nearby. There's probably going to be more of that going on, I guess. Certainly there's been government announcements in the budget and things, which is going to be hopefully incentivizing firms to invest and build and move house and things like that. So all of those possibly opportunities for those kind of workers, and they are good customers of convenience stores. Mm-hmm. So that will be fine, but it may well be that people who are scratch cooking are now going to be eating out more. So it may well be a couple of meals a week that are lost to convenience stores. Mm-hmm. But I think the opportunity for greater footfall and just people kind of moving around a bit more, I think the opportunities outweigh the losses, I think, there.
And you mentioned there about what I call sort of hybrid stores, so I mean, I spoke to David Sands last week with his David's Kitchen, fantastic operation that's got all of your convenience range in it, but then also got, I think one of his stores has got 50 covers, etc. What do you think about those once hospitality reopens? Do you think that the two can work together in tandem, or do you think that one will cannibalize from the other?
Well, I think the reasons for doing it were valid before the lockdown, that sort of movement. And I can't really see why, if we move to a situation where, there are no restrictions, I can't really see why those reasons would suddenly become invalid.
Okay.
I think possibly the pressure on it would be just economically, just in terms of the money in people's pockets, how often they choose to eat out or eat at home. But I suspect that a convenience store would probably be doing it in a more value way than a sort of white tablecloth restaurant would be anyway. So, if anything, it might skew it even more towards that way. I think one of the effects of the lockdown has been to just sort of dampen down a lot of this innovation in this area. I mean, the sort of new stores, and particularly if it's a bit innovative and a bit hybrid, it's probably a couple of years in the planning anyway. So the ones that have been opening recently have probably been, planned well before all of this. But I suspect there's been a bit of slight dampening on that sort of investment and innovation, apart from anything else, because retail is very normally it's very public, so people can see an innovation very sort of easily, and they, you know, other operators will visit and there'll be a kind of cross fertilization, things like that. So I think a bit less of that has been happening just because people have been moving about less. So there may well be a little lag really before, you know, we see a lot more of those coming on stream. But I still think that, you know, the reasons for moving much more into food service, you know, and away from packaged grocery, I think those reasons are still valid, just for lifestyle reasons. And so I suspect we'll see more in the future. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you've seen convenience all around the world in the time that I've known you, and I'm sure plenty before that as well. Not that I'm aging you at all here, David, but where do you think, because David gave me his opinion last week, where do you think the best convenience in the world can be found, and where would you suggest that people look to if they are looking to understand what the future of UK convenience looks like?
Um, Gosh, I mean, I think that it's probably not just in one place. I think there's lots of different parts of the world where you can draw something from. So, I mean, two recent places I've been to recently. I've been in the last few years. I've been to both Seattle and Tokyo, for example.
Okay.
Now, in Seattle, of course, you have the Amazon Go store, the first Amazon Go store, which is recently. We've had a branch open in London here, which has got just literally amazing technology of the app lets you in, you pick stuff off the shelves, you walk out, and you're charged, you know, absolutely to the cent, the correct amount. But the problem they had, in my experience of being in that store, the problem they had was replenishment. You know, it's not staffless. They had half a dozen people on the shop floor, and because I went in at lunchtime, they were constantly running out of sandwiches and drinks, and they were constantly having to replenish that, while somebody was stationed in the alcohol section just to sort of to check ages and things like that if necessary. You know, and there was nobody buying anything there. So I think that you can use that technology, but you kind of need to apply it in a way that is appropriate for the area which you're trading in, you know, which city centre Seattle might not be transferable over here. Also in Seattle, just down the road, you know, you've got a massive Whole Foods store, obviously owned by Amazon as well. And just as kind of the theatre of the food service in there, the way you can actually really get a really bespoke meal from any kind of cuisine anywhere in the world, you know, within a few seconds of walking, whatever you feel like. Absolutely amazing. They have the Starbucks roastery also in Seattle, just to take a coffee shop and turn it into a kind of Willy Wonka chocolate factory type experience or something like that, you know, tremendous. So there's a lot in terms of kind of the visual stimulation of the shopper, but just the kind of general interest and excitement of the shopper, which I think must lead to incremental purchases just if you're engaging people that much more. And then just briefly on Tokyo, you know, very densely populated urban environment. The stores there are very small, but the replenishment is amazing. You know, you could go into any store at any time of day or night, you never see a gap on the shelf. And you know, despite being, you know, quite busy, and they replenish with very, very tiny vehicles going down very, very narrow alleyways and streets like that, all electric, I believe, you know, and I think that might be, so I think that's something that for certain locations might be very interesting for convenience stores, using very small, environmentally friendly electric vehicles for kind of fresh replenishment in some areas, which I think, you know, would be welcomed by the other people that live and work in the area as well.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. You've heard it here first. Go over to Seattle, go over to Tokyo when we're allowed to. Obviously, don't be breaking any lockdown laws, please. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you joining me for this episode of Convenience Talks. Thank you, David Rees.
My pleasure. Thank you.